You know that feeling when you're doing the math on something and halfway through you just stop? Because the numbers aren't adding up the way you thought they would? That's what having a kid in America feels like in 2026. This video is exactly what the title says. A real, honest look at what it actually costs to have a child today and who can actually afford it. Not the feel-good version, the real version. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. Having a child in the United States now costs somewhere between $310,000 and $414,000 before college. Before college. And that number has exploded in ways that would have been unthinkable to your parents. So the question you should be asking right now is, does my income actually make me someone who can afford this? And more importantly, what does the math say about the millions of people who are doing it anyway? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly where that money goes and why the system is designed to make sure you never see it coming. My name is Seb, and I'm the kind of person who will genuinely ruin a dinner party by bringing up opportunity cost. Hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if it opens your eyes to something new. Before we dive in, let me ask you something. What number did you have in your head before you clicked this video? $100,000? $150,000? Most people guess somewhere in that range. And they're not being naive. They've just never seen the full picture laid out in front of them. Here's the truth that's going to sting a little. The U.S. fertility rate just hit an all-time record low of 1.6 births per woman. That's not a coincidence. That's an economic signal. And it's one worth understanding. The birth bill nobody prepares for. Let's start with day one. Before your child takes a single breath, you're already spending money. The total cost of pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum care, combining what your insurer pays and what comes out of your pocket, averages $20,416. Your personal out-of-pocket share? Around $2,743 for a vaginal delivery. If you have a C-section, which now accounts for nearly 1 in 3 births in the United States, that out-of-pocket number climbs to over $3,000. And if you don't have insurance, a vaginal birth runs $14,768 to $18,000. A C-section? Anywhere from $26,000 to $51,000. Think about it this way. In many other developed countries, you show up, have your baby, and go home. In the United States, you show up, have your baby, and then wait for the bill. And that's just the beginning. The child care trap, where budgets go to die. Here's where it gets really interesting. And by interesting, I mean brutal. The single biggest financial shock of early parenthood isn't diapers. It isn't formula. It's childcare. According to Care.com's 2026 Cost of Care report, center-based daycare now averages $332 per week. That's $17,264 per year. If you want a full-time nanny, you're looking at $870 per week. That's $45,240 a year for one child. Let me show you exactly how this works in real life. The federal government says childcare is affordable when it costs 7% of your household income. At $17,264 a year for center-based care, you'd need to earn roughly $246,600 for it to hit that threshold. The median U.S. household income in 2024 was $83,730. That gap is not a rounding error. That's a structural failure that millions of families are quietly absorbing every single month. Here's what the average person does wrong. They look at the monthly daycare cost and think, okay, I can handle that. What they don't calculate is the 5-year total. From birth to kindergarten, national average daycare runs to approximately $87,500. That's before a single dollar of college savings, retirement contribution, or emergency fund. And over 60% of parents are spending more than 20% of their household income on childcare alone. 1 in 3 dips into savings to cover it. This is what nobody talks about. Childcare isn't a line item. For most families, it is the budget, the motherhood penalty, the hidden six-figure cost. Now, here's where things get really messed up. The financial cost of having a child isn't just what you spend, it's what you stop earning. And for mothers specifically, that number is staggering. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research shows that in the United States, women suffer a long-run earnings penalty of around 33% relative to men after having children. Each child under age 5 reduces a mother's earnings by roughly 15%. Over a full career, that compounds to more than $500,000 in lost income. Your brain is actually working against you here. There's something in behavioral economics called optimism bias, the well-documented tendency for people to believe they are less likely than average to experience negative outcomes. Studies show roughly 80% of adults have it. When you picture having a child, your brain naturally focuses on the good parts, the birthday parties, the milestones, the family holidays. What it doesn't model clearly is a 15% income reduction that compounds for 2 decades. And here's the part that makes the motherhood penalty even more frustrating. Fathers don't experience the same hit. In fact, research shows that fathers earn about 25% more than childless men after having children. They get promoted faster. They're perceived as more stable and committed. Meanwhile, mothers are 8 times less likely than childless women to be recommended for management positions. Same qualifications, completely different outcome. This is the hidden six-figure cost that never makes it into the parenting budget spreadsheet. What the total bill actually looks like. Let's be real about something. When people talk about the $310,000 cost of raising a child, that's a floor, not a ceiling. Here's the full picture. The Brookings Institution's updated USDA figure, adjusted for post-pandemic inflation, comes to $310,605 for a middle-income family raising a child to age 18. But that number uses $2,022. Pushed to 2025, you're closer to $320,000. Other analysts using broader cost methodologies, like SoFi, arrive at $414,000. And those figures don't include college. If you want to fund 4 years at a public in-state university for a child born today, you're looking at projected costs of $196,000 to $240,000 because tuition has been rising at around 5% per year. A private university, closer to $330,000 to $564,000. Now add the motherhood earnings penalty, $500,000 plus. And the opportunity cost. If the $320,000 in child-rearing expenses were invested in the S&P 500 at its historical 10% average return, it would grow to approximately $1.78 million over 18 years. This isn't an argument against having children. It's an argument for seeing the numbers clearly. Because your financial system, your bank, your financial advisor, the insurance company, none of them are going to sit you down and walk you through this math. They'll sell you a life insurance policy and call it family planning. What previous generations experienced. Here's the uncomfortable reality about the generational comparison. The total inflation-adjusted cost of raising a child has only risen about 16% in real terms over the past 55 years. So in purely aggregate terms, kids aren't that much more expensive than they were for your parents, but the composition has completely changed. Childcare and education costs have risen 1,175% in real terms since 1960. Healthcare costs up 155%. And the categories that got cheaper, food and clothing, are the ones that matter least in a modern budget. Meanwhile, childcare costs have grown at roughly twice the rate of general inflation, and 8 to 10 times the rate of real wage growth. Family health insurance premiums went from $5,791 per year in 1999 to $26,993 in 2025. That's a 366% increase, while median wages grew roughly 54% in the same period. Homeownership rates for people aged 25 to 34 fell from 45% in 1990 to 37% in 2015 and have only partially recovered. The average age of first-time homebuyers hit 35 in 2024. I know what you're thinking. People did this on one income back then, and they did. But they also bought a house for 3 times their annual salary. Today, the average home costs 5.3 times median household income. That's not discipline versus avocado toast. That's a fundamentally different economic environment. Look, here's the bottom line. The $300,000 headline number is real, but the true cost of having a child in America, factoring in college savings, the motherhood earnings penalty, healthcare, and foregone investment returns, approaches $1 million for a middle-income family. That's not designed to scare you. That's just the math. Here's what you actually need to take away from this. 1. Childcare alone will likely cost more than your rent in the early years. Build that into any financial plan before you need it. 2. The motherhood earnings penalty is real, documented, and enormous. Dual-income families need to plan for it and advocate against it. 3. Your parents didn't have it easier because they were tougher. The cost structure of American family life has shifted dramatically toward the categories that hurt most. And 4. The U.S. fertility rate hitting a record low of 1.6 isn't a cultural story, it's an economic one. Nearly 1 in 4 millennials and Gen Z adults cite finances as the deciding factor in not having children. That number will keep moving until the economics change. Having kids is one of the most personal decisions a person can make, and no spreadsheet can fully capture what family means. But going in with open eyes, knowing the real numbers, gives you something most people don't have: a fighting chance to actually be prepared. The math is what it is. What you do with it is up to you.